Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for hopping on. If it's your first time of meeting me, my name is Varentum Nyema. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. Like I said, my name is Varentum Nyema. I'm a fourth year radiography student based in Nigeria. And apart from my studies in radiography, I'm also a proficient medical writer and also a YouTuber. And I'll also love you guys to watch this video to the end. So today I have an amazing guest speaker. She's an amazing personality. I won't be the one to introduce her. Hey, Dr. Farah, could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Um, you know, uh, I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Recently got my doctorate degree in organizational leadership. My background was emergency medicine. I started my career in Canada and then moved to New York City where I did travel nursing and kind of worked in various different emergency departments, including level 1 trauma centers. So I loved emergency medicine and then transitioned into education and had several roles in education, including working at NYU as an adjunct faculty, clinical instructor, and then as a clinical educator. And then later went into some leadership positions, such as the director of education. And then on the other side, I opened up my own business as a nurse career coach 3 years ago because I saw a big need and a big gap for new nurses transitioning into the profession. There wasn't a lot of guidance. Like, yes, we do have mentorship and informal mentorship and formal mentorship programs, but I wanted to give them a little bit more support as they're transitioning into the profession. So as a nurse career coach, I not only help new nurses, but I also help other nurses level up in their career and land their dream jobs in less than 90 days. So that's a little bit about me. And I also wrote a book called Nurses Making Money Moves, A Nurse's Guide to Starting a Business, because I truly believe that nurses are really knowledgeable and need to start having multiple streams of income. So yes, thank you again for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Amazing. I literally nurses out there have other interests apart from bedside roles in nursing. They can also become transition roles as well. So yeah,
Right.
thank you so much for and I believe that the audience now know a little bit more about you. So we have a couple of questions for you to answer. You ready?
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So the first question for you goes this way: how do you integrate coaching principles into your nursing practice? Talk us through.
Coaching, can you say that beginning part again?
Okay, how do you integrate your coaching principles in your nursing practice? Talk us through.
Okay, my coaching principle. So I guess I'm not working right now clinically in a direct patient kind of care role. I kind of left the bedside a little while ago, but I always go back to my principles and the fundamentals of emergency medicine and obviously what we learned in nursing school. So, one of the big things is the nursing process, which really can be used not only in nursing, but also it could be applied to just regular day life, right? So we talk about assessment, diagnosis, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So really that's what nursing is surrounded and the fundamentals of nursing. So I apply that to my coaching as well, because a lot of times most issues or problems we need to start at the root, right? And do an assessment, just like physicians do and other healthcare workers, right? You need to assess the situation. So I assess my clients and see what it is that they truly need. And then we go into more of clarity and mindset, right? In order to solve a problem, you need clarity. And then in order to get direction on what your next steps are, whether it's in your personal life, your professional career, you really need clarity and direction and really what you want to do. So that's kind of what I help them with. And a lot of it has to do with mindset. But really, I think a lot of the principles, like you mentioned, um, one big thing is I'm really somebody who likes to be true to be true to myself. So I hold my clients accountable and I ask them, what do you really want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Because a lot of times they get a little bit influenced by society or what other people are telling them or what their family members are telling them to do, and they're not going after what they really want. So I really hold them accountable, and we go through what it is that they really want to achieve and not what others want to do, because essentially you're going to be living that life, no one else, right? So I usually also tell them, plan the type of lifestyle that you want before you go after your career, because sometimes it can be conflicting, especially if you have, like, say, young kids, and things like that. You may not want to be working night shift or, weekends, holidays, those types of things. So really the principles is really keeping them honest to themselves, being authentic, and being very transparent and real with my clients. Same thing in nursing and my practice. I was very honest about, what the things that were happening, and opening up the lines of communication to make sure that everybody was clear and on the same page. So I hope that that answers your question.
Amazing. I love the fact that you demand for nurses out there to like mentors, like directs people where exactly to fit in based on your own narratives. It's amazing that you integrated your coaching principles into your nursing practice, which is an amazing thing to do. And it's amazing that you transitioned from bedside roles and to non-bedside roles. And if you check out my YouTube, other videos, I had also a nurse practitioner who based in the UK. She
Mhm.
she left the bedside role and moved into your nursing practice. So that draws us to the next question for you. So could you share an example through coaching? Talk us there.
Sure. So, I think, as you mentioned, coaching, um, like mentorship, there has similarities, but it also has differences. So for me, the easiest way for people to understand coaching is kind of like from a sports perspective, right? To look at it from that standpoint. So a coach really is going to be there step by step and really giving you the tools that you need to be successful and holding you accountable in that moment. So that's really what I do with my clients. And I think the biggest thing, whether you're a nurse or not a nurse, humans sometimes tend to be negative thinkers, right? So the biggest, I think, obstacle is really mindset and how people think. And, a lot of nurses that I work with, even experienced nurses that might have maybe 10 or 20 years of experience, they might think, well, I don't know if I can apply for this position. I don't know if I'm qualified. However, they're usually overqualified for the position and they should be applying for it. But mentally, they have built this negative self talk and self limiting beliefs that are holding them back from taking action and moving forward in their professional career. So we really get into mindset and really help them see what the options are and the opportunities. And really, a lot of the times, the person that's holding you back, from success usually is yourself, right? Or, other influences, but usually it's mindset is number one. So you have to be able to change your mindset and the way that you think before you can change your behavior and take action and make change, right? And that goes for anything really. But that's really the foundation of my coaching is the mindset. And I would say every nurse that I've worked with, the common thread at the end of working with me is that they say that their perspective has changed, the way they think, and also their confidence has increased. So those are the two biggest things that they usually say because it has a lot to do with mindset. And I myself am still working on my mindset, every day. So
Wow, wow, that's amazing. These are needed qualities, needed for to facilitate nurses out there, through your coaching, which is amazing thing you're offering to the table. and I believe that your clients are really happy to have you, coach them because, talking about mindset, it's if you begin to talk about mindset, I think it's going to take a whole day. So working on your
Yeah.
client's mindset is just amazing. And Dr. Fire, we wish you all the best in your practice in order to, help other nurses out there to make a valuable decision out there. So
Thank you.
hold on a minute. Before we proceed to the next question, I want to ask you, how was it like to transition from a country to another country in a city? So talk us through about that travel you made because you literally worked in Canada,
Hmm.
right? So you
Yeah.
proceeded to the US. How was that transition? How did it work out for you?
Sure. So, at the time, as a new nurse, I was in my early 20s. And I'm somebody who's always been very ambitious. I always love to travel. I like to learn about different cultures and things like that. And I I grew up in Canada in a small city. Um, it was close to Michigan, which was close to Detroit, Michigan, a border city, so huge international crossing. So we would go to Michigan quite a bit. But my point is, I was never afraid to like travel and to learn about new cultures and to really adapt, especially being an emergency nurse, right? The foundational traits of an emergency nurse or even a healthcare worker, but more so in critical care, such as emergency medicine, is that you have to learn to be really adaptive, right? Change quickly and be flexible. So I'm not afraid of change and I like to challenge myself. So I stayed in Canada for 5 years and worked in the emergency department because, in order to do travel nursing, you need a strong foundation, right? You need at least, I would recommend, 3 to 5 years before you take off and do travel nursing assignments because whether you stay in Canada and do travel nursing or anywhere in the world, you have to realize that when you get to the place to do travel nursing, they're not going to teach you the fundamentals of nursing, right? Typically, it was 2 days of orientation that when you went to an organization that the travel company would give you. Literally, you would learn their computerized system, like what they used, and you would maybe get half a day with someone to kind of show you around the place, or maybe a day you would spend with a nurse to learn like their policies and procedure. And then you would be kind of on your own. So clinically, I would recommend you have to be very strong clinically before you move and do travel nursing. And then number two, you have to be able to adapt, obviously, and you know, live somewhere else. So for me, I was like, I'm going to go to New York City, like one of the biggest cities in the world, because I just love that diversity and I love, the big city feel. And it was one of the best decisions that I made in my career because it really helped me grow professionally and personally. But, you know, to get there, I really had to do my own research. So, I didn't have like a lawyer helping me. I had to apply for a visa screen. So for me, I had to go through the CGFNS, submit a bunch of paperwork, and I had a trade NAFTA visa, a TN visa at the time, and I could only work for a particular organization. So I started with AMN, which is an organization in California. So it took me about almost 2 years to work on all that paperwork. And then I had to take my licensing exam in the US, my NCLEX, I had to take in Michigan. And then once you're licensed, you could work in other states depending if it's a compact state or you just have to they have to verify your license. I mean, now there's a lot more states in the US that are part of the compact. So if like your license, say in Michigan, there might be other states that you can work at, but it's not all states just yet. So places like New York City, California, I don't think they're fully in the compact um states, but basically, like I said, it was a great experience, great learning experience. But it comes with challenges, but that's the only way to grow, right? As a nurse and in your career. So definitely a good way to see other places is to do travel nursing.
Amazing. I love the fact that you mentioned that it's one of the best decisions, to make that move. I know it's quite challenging. It's never easy. Also passed that exam, for licensed nurses in the US, because I've had a lot of guest speakers who had to write that exam the second time. They failed it the first time, they wrote it the second time. They also failed it in the second time. They had to go for it the third time. And you wrote it once and you passed, which is amazing, Dr. Farah. It's amazing. I know the reason why I'm hammering that because preparing for that exam is quite challenging, even though you have some materials, there are things you need to go deeper in, so which is amazing that you took that intriguing step. And look at you right now, doing amazingly well, helping other nurses, to make a valuable decision, like I said before. So thank you so much for talking us through about
Thank
the
you.
behind the scenes on how you transitioned from, working 5 years, in Canada as an emergency medicine nurse before proceeding to New York right now,
Yeah.
and you're working as a leader in nursing practice.
Add one thing, it
Okay.
was very different though, leaving Canada. And I'm sure working in different provinces in Canada might be different, whether you're working in a bigger city or a more rural area. Um, but there were some big differences leaving Canada to go to the US, because remember, in Canada, we have a socialized system where everybody gets healthcare, right? Um, Everybody can go to their physician. Anyone can go to the emergency room. There's no copay. You can have a child. You don't have to pay money for it. The only difference is like you have to pay for your medications and things like that, right? Or if you go to an eye doctor, if you're over 18, whatever it is, you still have to pay. But in general, there's public health. You can give vaccinations for free. Everything is taken care of. But in the U.S., this is like a whole nother show, because in the US, it's one of the most advanced countries in the world. However, they do not provide healthcare to all, which to me is a crime, because I truly believe fundamentally that healthcare is a right. It's a basic human right for everybody. So for me, it was very difficult to make that transition, especially working in the emergency room. A lot of people would come in and use the emergency room as their primary care because they didn't have any health care. You would get a lot of people coming in, a lot of homeless people, or they would wait until they were really, really sick until they would come into the ER. So it was very sad, and it was a lot of challenging situations, but that was a big culture shock to see. And it's like, the US can make changes, but they still have this privatized type healthcare, and it's kind of crazy. And then sometimes people will make fun of other healthcare systems like Canada, and like they're like, oh, we don't want that. People wait a long time. But if you think about it, Canadians are healthier because they have access to healthcare, right? They go to the doctor sooner, right? There's primary care, there's screenings, there's all these things in place. So I think, in a sense, like the US is really behind in that, in terms of healthcare, because, uh, you know, like I said, it's another show, but that was the biggest, adjustment for me to make. And I think that's why nurses in the US have to play a more I can't speak, integral part in education and public health, because the more you educate the public and communities, at least they can take a little bit better care of themselves. So that was the biggest challenge for me. Yeah.
That's part of, traveling. You have to face some culture shock.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that you haven't you adapted, because you've lived your whole life in Canada. You've had access to some things, and you moved to another direction, another country, and those access you had before in terms of healthcare was a little limited somehow. And that is a culture shock, in quote, but you're adapted. There are people that do. I don't take that. I'm not interested. I'm not. I can't fit in. But look at you right now. I think this is a point out for the audience as well. If you're trying to like make that move, you're gonna face a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
But you will definitely conquer if you're strong, if you're adaptable. Look at Dr. Farah now. She's really doing amazing work. You need to connect with her on LinkedIn to know what I'm saying because I don't want to go further. Her LinkedIn account is going to be added to the YouTube description below.
Thank
Connect
you.
with her and you're good to go. Thank you so
I wanted to add one more thing. Sorry, I'm like taking taking it over. You said that I lived in Canada my whole life. Actually, that's not true because I just wanted to share with you and the audience. I was actually born in West Africa in Ivory Coast, and we immigrated to Canada when I was 9 years old. So, not only am I a first gen immigrant, I'm very proud of that. And I spoke French, and English is my second language. And, like I said, I recently graduated from a doctorate program. So that's why I mention a lot of times in some of the articles that I write or, podcasts that I'm on that I'm a proud first gen immigrant because I want to show really to, globally to other nurses or even healthcare workers out there that it is possible because I know there's a lot of, people globally that are traveling to different areas. I know there's a lot of nurses that are leaving Africa, going to the UK or Ireland or the US or Canada. So, my biggest advice would be to do your research before you get connected with some of these organizations, so you don't get taken advantage of. Maybe get a lawyer and, find out what the immigration laws. And then the other thing is make sure that you're being supported in that transition and talk to other nurses who have done it. Talk to other nurses who have made that switch. And I think there's people on YouTube and maybe LinkedIn and things like that that help these international nurses travel abroad just to make sure that they're safe. So connect with people and make sure you inform yourself before you make these big moves.
much.
And then also get mentors. That's the other big thing. Get multiple mentors. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Yeah, there are a lot of people that do that, especially
Yeah.
on YouTube, that they direct people, based on that. So if also on LinkedIn as well, you just have to do your research. It's based on your research. So, like Dr. Farah said, do your research, get a lawyer before you get advantage of, so yeah. So get do the necessary things that the Farah told you and you're good to go. It's amazing to hear that you were born out of the coast. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much for talking to us here about that, Dr. Farah. So next question for you is in a nutshell, what strategies do you use to build trust and rapport with your clients? What do you have to
Oh,
say about that?
that's a great question. So, um, when I first started my business about 3 years ago, a lot of nurses, were like, why are you starting this nurse career coaching business? Like, it's not even going to be needed. Like, they're like, people that work at universities and colleges, sometimes help these nursing students with resumes and cover letters and interview skills and things like that. And I'm like, well, number one, they're not nurses. I'm a nurse and they're not nurses. And I'm like, I also have the background and the experience and the knowledge to really share with them what I've been through. Not only have I worked, like I said, in Canada, I've worked in emergency medicine, which I'll tell my origin story about how I got into the emergency department. I share this all the time because that's what led me to start my business. In my senior year in Canada, when I went to school, my clinical instructor asked me, like, Farah, what type of nurse do you want to be? And I said, I want to be an ER nurse. I want to be an emergency nurse. And she laughed at me and she said, you'll never be an ER nurse because you're too unorganized and you should go into med surge, medical surgical, because that's what they told everybody back then. Right. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, how can an educator say that to a student? So of course I didn't listen. Me and another student got to go to the ER in their last rotation, and I made some great connections. I applied, and they hired me as a nursing student before I even took my licensing exam. So that's why I built this business as a nurse career coach to really empower nurses to follow their goals, follow their dreams, and not to listen to negativity, right? So the way that I build trust with them is number one, storytelling, right? I share my own story and they can connect with that, right? So that's number one. Number two is I share my expertise and my credibility, right? So obviously, I've worked my way up in nursing. I have 20 years of experience. I've worked in various hospitals, hospital systems, and I have my doctorate, my master's in education, all these things. And then I'm board certified. I'm 6 times board certified. So certified in emergency medicine, multiple certifications, also in education and in leadership. And then I think just my personality is what attracts a lot of my clients to me because I'm someone who's just real. Like I'm just going to give it to you straight, right? I'm not going to, be fake and tell you all this stuff. Like I'm going to tell you what you need to do, and be direct with you. And I think people love that realness and authenticity because it's missing in the world today. So I think they can connect with me because I'm a nurse and I was once where they were. So that's what I think attracts my clients to me. And then I just create content. You have to be visible on social media if you have a business. As you know yourself, you have a YouTube channel, you're on LinkedIn. You have to create content, and not only content that highlights your expertise in leadership, but you have to give away content that's valuable, right? So I'm constantly giving tips on, how to interview, what to avoid. And I think they resonate with that because they're like, oh, okay, nobody's really sharing this stuff with me. And and in my career, there's been a lot of people who have been gatekeepers, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like not trying to give you that knowledge and tell you like, hey, maybe you should do this or this is how you can. So I always believe, they talk about as you're climbing up, pull one behind you, right? Like you have to mentor, coach other people. Because what is knowledge if you're not sharing it with other people, right? So that's truly what it is because I don't want them to make the same mistakes I've made. And I
Yeah.
want them to not struggle, right? I want them to be excited about our nursing profession. And one of the big things that I like to do is really keep my content real but also positive because there's a lot of negativity in the world and then surrounding healthcare and nursing, but I want to show them the positives of our profession because we want more people to come into it, right? And it does afford people a great life. You can travel, you can do so many things with nursing. And a lot of the public, they don't really know what nurses do. They have a very limited view. They think nurses just work in the hospital. But, when COVID came around, I think the world saw like nurses are everywhere. Nurses can work in the government, health policy, in the communities, so many places. So I'm always going to be an advocate for the nursing profession and uplift our profession. But I think that's how I create that trust, is to just really be positive and real. And they can see that I'm coming from a place of like, I want to help.
It's these amazing strategies to build trust and rapport with your clients. I love the fact you mentioned about being real, because there are a lot of, like you said, there are a lot of negativities out there. And, being authentic at what you do is really shows who you are, really. You know, amazing, 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 Dr. Farah, to work with you so much. Because, yeah, I've been following your journey. So I'm one of testaments. You really
Thank you.
you you take your word and care what's happening. Like you do your thing, face it. You keep doing it because you've been there before. Like you said, you don't
Yeah.
want people out there to make that mistake you've made in the past. which could cost a lot for nurses right now if they don't follow those precautions and those advices you've given them. So you're really doing amazing as well, and I believe that the audience are really grateful and enlightened based on that. So the next question for you is, hmm, approach resistance. Talk resistant talk when clients are hesitant about making change. How do you do that?
Um, so again, I think it goes back to the beginning, right? What we talked about. Uh, so before I take any clients on, I have a consultation meeting with them, right? And it's very important because when I first started my business, I worked with everybody who was willing to work with me and who wanted to work with me. However, I changed that model. I changed that business model when I learned more about business, because there's something that we say: you have to qualify your leads and qualify who you work with. Because I don't want to work with everybody because, and I don't want everyone's money. Why is that? Because there's specific people that you might work with that might be difficult, or that don't really want to change, or they're not willing to put in the work, right? So that's why I'm very careful about who I select to work with, because I want serious people who are serious about making change and taking action so they can get the outcome that they want, right? Because there's no use in me, like, just like smoking, for example, right? Like, people who smoke, like, they know it's bad for them, right? Like, you could sit for hours and say, hey, stop smoking because it's bad for you, da 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 da. They're not going to change because they're not ready to change, right? We talk, like, I think there's a theory called Bandura's theory or something. Like, people have to be open to change to be able to take action. So really, that's the foundation. Like, I do a consultation call with them first, and then I see if it's somebody that I want to work with. And then if there's still a bit of resistance, because we're all human, right? I just really focus on the outcome, right? So if it's a nurse, maybe that's been working in a place for a few years and they don't like it, they want something different. Maybe it's a very toxic environment and they want to get out. Well, we focus on, like, what the outcome is. What do you really want? Do you want to get out? You want to go to this other place, right? It's like kind of losing weight, right? Is another thing. Like, do you want these six-pack abs? Right? Then this is what you have to do. So, that's kind of how I manage that, because a lot of coaching and, talking about mindset has to really do with behavior change, like you're talking about, in psychology, and really what motivates that individual to make that change. So it's a lot of just conversation,
Yeah,
and just vetting them to make sure that they're ready to make those changes, to take action, so that they can get to the professional advancement that, or the position, their dream job that they want.
I think that's a very solid step to take. Consultation first to get to know
Right.
them, who they are. Really amazing.
I changed it to a paid consultation, because I used to do I used to do consultations, but people just mess around, like, they're not serious. So I follow someone, her
Yeah,
name is Rachel Rogers, and she's like, no, you need to charge for consultations, because it's only going to be people who are serious that will pay that money to do a consultation. So that's what I've done.
yeah, absolutely. I do agree. I do agree. That shows the seriousness in what you're doing. People to pay for that consultation, that means you're serious,
Right.
because I could just book a call with you just to see your face.
Just
I'll just be,
waste.
you know, it's
Yeah, yeah.
amazing that I approach such, hesitant approaches from, people that book callings with you. And it's amazing that you're handling those cases with intimidate care as possible, because you're a nurse, right? You've taken care of some patients with your whole heart, so you also apply that,
Yeah.
care to your clients as well. It's amazing. It's amazing. I love to hear that you don't work with everybody. Amazing. Because some people are really, I don't know. It applies to my own work as well as a writer. Anyhow, companies as well, because there's some companies that have that they pay, you know, before they pay you, it's gonna take it's a whole lot, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to Sarah. So, we have two more questions for you to go. So before
Sure.
we wrap up the session, so
Sure.
the second to last question for you is, what role does self-care encourage it in your clients? Top is there.
Okay, that's a great question. Um, you know, a lot of times people will talk about self-care. Actually, it's self-care month, September. So that's great that you brought that question up. And I think nurses in general and healthcare professionals struggle with self-care, even though, because I think a lot of us who go into healthcare are very selfless and we're about service and serving others. And a lot of times we neglect our own care and taking care of ourselves, right? I think it's just the nature of our personalities, right? We're just giving and nurturing. And then sometimes you just have to remember that we need to take care of ourselves first. So obviously, nurses are sometimes bad for that. We don't get enough sleep, we don't eat properly, things like that. So especially if we have, young children working full time and, we're trying to do all the things, going to school sometimes at the same time as working. So it could be all very overwhelming and stressful. So I think self care really is up to the individual. It's funny you asked that because I actually did my doctoral work on creating a toolkit for nurses. Creating a toolkit. It's called, stress reduction strategies for nurses. And obviously, I did like a literature review and everything. And what I found in that research, there still needs to be a lot more research that gets done. But, things like pet care, pet therapy, especially with dogs, is helpful. Research shows that nurses are a little bit more happier when there's dogs around. Even with patients, we see that sometimes in healthcare settings, they'll bring dogs, and patients get a little bit happier, especially with pediatrics, with kids, right? So that's one thing. Another big thing is sleep. you know Sleep is very underrated. uh, you know we're humans. We need to sleep. So that's one big thing. The other thing is gratitude journaling. So I've been watching a lot of videos on gratitude, manifestation, and things like that. And it's really important to be grateful, right? It sounds kind of woo woo and whatever, but no matter where you are in the world, right? Like, it's truly important to be grateful, you know, number one, for even just safety, being safe where you are. There's many areas in the world where we see there's a lot of wars going on and things like that. That's a basic. We talk about, like, the hierarchy of needs, Maslow, right? Safety is like fundamental. So just being safe, having food, water to drink, things like that, just simple things to be grateful for. There's so many things that we could be grateful for. And I think our society, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too, is we complain a lot, right? There's a lot of complaining going on. And I catch myself sometimes and I try to not complain as much, because they say gratitude journaling actually helps people become more happy. And I actually created on Amazon a gratitude journal. It's available on Amazon. If you could just type in Dr. Farah Laurent, you'll see it on there. And then there's a space where you could write affirmations and different things like that. So that's one thing. Another thing is prayer. So I don't like to talk about religion much, because whoever wants to believe what is their business. But I'm someone who does believe in God and I have faith. And in the research, it says that prayer does work. Like, prayer works. So it helps with self-care and things like that. They've even done research where there's patients that have prayed and some that have not. And, there's different things like that. And then one last thing that I'll share is music. So I love music. I love listening to music. And then the research that I did, I found that there's some studies that show if someone listens to just 30 minutes of music a week, just 30 minutes a week, physiologically, it'll help you reduce blood pressure, heart rate, things like that, right? So music is another big thing. And I think it helps people cope. So, but again, my advice to people is find what works for you. So for me, like I like to take walks outside. I think that nature is very healing, just being alone outside walking. And then again, music for me, and then massages. I like massages. Um, but yeah, and then journaling is very important. So
Yeah.
just want to throw that out there. I know I'm talking a lot, but
You have a lot of repeated, drop it one off after the other. You
yes.
know, thank you so much for sharing that. What role does health self care play in your coaching practice, and how you incorporate it and encourage such amazing self care strategies in your clients as well. I don't want to go more deeper. You've explained literally everything. When you talked about the music aspect, that's
Mhm.
true. And yeah, and the last part of what you said about have to know what works for you.
Yeah.
We can't decide. You just have to make it up to yourself to know what really works for you. So, Dr. Farah, we've come to the last question for you. Um, so, hmm, it's a bit tricky, but I know you're ready for it.
Yeah. Always.
Can you discuss any ethical considerations specific to nursing coaching? What do you have to say about that?
Any ethical considerations?
What do you?
I don't know. That's a good question. I would say probably the only thing for me would be, again, like I said, my foundational values are always going to be surrounded around, authenticity, like respect, um, and honesty, right? So for some reason, if I feel like I can't help someone, or maybe I'm not a good fit for them, I would just tell them, I don't think that we should move forward and work together. And maybe I can have another recommendation for them. So that could be one. Or if I feel that maybe they're going into an area where I don't think they should go into, but it's their choice, I'll support them if that's really what they want. But again, like I would always guide them and just do the right thing. So if we are a good fit to work together, then great. If not, I would just tell them that we're not a good fit, or I would refer them to someone else if possible. And what other ethical things? Um, that's about it. The only thing I can think of is I highly recommend to people not to just settle for any job, because a lot of nurses that graduate, and again, I do work with all nurses. I just want to throw that out there. But the majority of the clients that come to me are new grads. I don't want them to settle for any job, because what happens is they're doing a disservice to themselves. And they're like, I just want any job because I just want to get paid, right? And that's the worst thing they can do, because if you go into a position that you're not excited about, you're not passionate about, you're not going to be serving the population, the people, the best, right? Because if you're happy, your patients will be happy. So, if you love working with kids, then that's where you should be, is working with kids, not adults, right? um, because the last thing we need is more nurses out there who get burnt out easily and who leave the profession. So that's why I'm such a big advocate for people going into the areas that they truly are passionate about. And then, maybe there's people that probably shouldn't be in nursing at all. Like and it's happened. I used to be the director of a nursing program, And there was this one student who wasn't doing well. And the professors kept saying, academically, we don't think she's that strong. We tried everything. But I'm like, but did you really sit and talk to her? So what we found out after talking to her, I had a long conversation with her. She didn't want to be in nursing. The only reason she wanted to be a nurse is because her father wanted her to be a nurse, right? So we know that it happens a lot, and especially in certain families, like especially in immigrant families, like not just in Africa, but other places. They're like, oh, we want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, right? So I feel like if you're a parent watching this, like don't force your kids to go into these particular areas because they're not happy. And sometimes they'll just go through the program and then they'll just quit and they'll do something else. And then now you've wasted time and money and energy. So again, I'm just always going to say, like, follow what it is that you truly are passionate about, and what you want, because you have to have purpose and feel fulfilled, right? So yeah.
That's right. Wow. I don't want to digress further because you've literally touched every part, all the pain points. You just touched each one of them, and we've come to the last session of our Med Talk chats with Dr. Farah. So, like I said before, prior to the beginning of the session, you have to watch this video to the end because it's a lot of resources for especially nurses out there and also other healthcare professionals. You're not exempted because there's some nuggets for you, for everyone in the healthcare profession. So, so before we wrap up the session, Dr. Farah, what are your last words for the audience before we wrap up the session?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again. I want to say thank you so much, Ransom, for having me on this. I really appreciate it. My last words to the audience is really, life is too short. Do what you want to do. Be happy. Don't listen to negativity. Surround yourself with positive people and eliminate self-limiting beliefs, like eliminate negative thoughts and just really focus on positive thinking and really focus on your goals, your purpose, and what impact you want to make in the world. Also, social media is a big platform. A lot of people are shy about getting on social media and doing things, but I really urge people, um, especially nurses, to build a personal brand. I didn't cover this, we didn't talk about it much, but I've been laid off a couple times, and there's no job that's guaranteed, right? Even in healthcare, even in nursing. And a lot of these organizations, there are some great ones, but there's some that really don't truly care about you and they'll let you go in a second. So that's why it's so important to, and I'm glad that you're doing medical writing. I also do a little bit of writing on the side for Minority Nurse and some other things. I really urge you to have multiple streams of income and think about maybe starting a side hustle. Like I said, I'm going to throw it out there. I wrote a book called Nurses Making Money Moves, A Nurse's Guide to Starting a Business. You can be found on my website, nursefarah.com. But I truly mean that in the most sincerest way because, everybody has bills to pay, families to feed. So don't be afraid to be out there, be visible, and build your own personal brand because you never know what opportunities will come from it. To be out there sharing your expertise and your knowledge. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. So if you love this content, do well to subscribe, like, and share to your network. Hopefully, someone in your network will really, really love this video. Thank you so much, Dr. Farah. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.